Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new video over on the channel by the name of Leah's Chill. Today, I just want to go ahead and go through every character inside Tokyo Ghoul, break the chains, and talk about what sorts of teams they would kind of fit on and what they're good at, because there's a lot of really interesting units so far, and it's very curious the fact that they all seem to have very specific roles and what they're built on. So we're just going to go through every one of them. If you look in the description below, you'll find the chapters discussing each one of the characters and like which one you want to find out about. So feel free to skip around, find out about the characters you currently own, and we'll get right to it. But we're basically just going to be looking at the passive and the damage that they do on their individual attacks and what they gain off of upgrading their limits as well. So Rize, she's basically like a blue single target damage dealer. Her crit rate increases for every 1% drop in the enemy's HP. So this means that every subsequent attack will have an increased crit rate based on every percent less the enemy has from the original 100% HP they have. So if they're at half HP, she'll have a 50% crit rate, but that's on top of whatever crit rate she already has by default, which we can't currently check on here, unfortunately. But she does have like a set crit rate inside her kit as well. I wish I could check it in any sort of significant way, but you can't really do so. You can get crit rate on the factors as well to improve it, but there's no like flat way to check what her rate currently is. So you wouldn't be able to check, similar to Honkai Star Rail, for example, how well built your character is because some of the stats are hidden on the screen. She also gains 15% restoration rate for the entire team. Oh, so she increases the regen of your entire team for 3 regen / 3 heals, even if she's in your back row. She increases attack related stats for your whole team, decreases defense related stats for the enemy team if you use a skill at the end of if you have used a skill by the end of your turn. So if she uses a card on her turn, she will, up to 5, give a 3% attack buff to herself and a 3% defense debuff to the enemy. No, the entire team gets the attack buff, actually. So this crowd attack boost would synergize with buffing Arima's amplification as well. And it's up to 5 stacks. Kind of interesting. And her final limit is the power burst that grants 1 immunity to all attack skills for 1 turn. So if you were to combine her cards into 3-star, then when it becomes 3-star, she gains complete shield against all enemy attacks for 1 turn. That's crazy. That's frankly so crazy. And I probably will be trying to get her limit up to that point. These limit things are basically you put dupes into characters and give them a bunch of like the SSR coins that you would have to get their 3 passives as well. That's very strong. Definitely a pretty strong character for a single target DPS, but she does specialize in strictly that pretty much. So this is Arima. He's a single target DPS unit, which is mostly amplification based. So he'll deal more damage for every buff you give him. So he works well alongside characters like Nico, like Itori, like Uta, the ones that are giving you more than 1 buff and increasing that damage by a certain amount each time. On top of that, anytime you use any individual damage, any single target damage, he will follow it up with an extra 80% damage impale on the enemies as well. So if Rize uses 1 single target skill, he'll always hit them a second time just because he can. He also, every time he triggers an active skill, or every 2 times he uses the joint offense follow-up, he'll gain an extra 3% attack buff up to 6 times on each turn. So he kind of stacks like Eri does. Every one of those stacks for the 3% attack buff counts toward amplification. So if it were to be 6 stacks, for example, those 6 stacks would turn into 15, 30, 45, fucking 60, 75, 90% extra damage if you manage to get him fully stacked up. And then on top of that, he gains a chance to negate enemy block chance, which is like the negation thing that some characters have right now. And he has an extra power burst stack thing where his previous like stacking where he would only get 1 attack buff on every couple of triggers, he'll get 2 attack buffs per trigger of it as well, which just gives him even more amplification and kind of builds him up even faster than you would otherwise. He's very much like a single target DPS style unit that can't really take a lot of hits, but he really deals out a lot of damage as he's able to. And I feel like he works alongside a lot of units that are mostly single target. This character right here, I think, is one of the strongest characters in the entire fucking game. He is Red Gauther from 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross. What this means is, on his 1-star skill, he'll upgrade 1 random ally skill levels, and it could be anyone. Any one of your 4 characters, he'll just put them up to 2-star or 3-star just by default, by snapping. It could also even be his own cards, frankly. Or you can increase your entire skill, like your entire team skill levels, including your teammates inside raids. So you would buff your teammates 1-star up to 2-star by default. And he also has a straight up buff to basic stats of allies by 5% for 1 turn. And so this extra percent as well stacks with amplification to make it so that he is a really good team buffer that works with alongside amplification. And he's really good at just kind of supporting the whole team and making them stronger as well. Now, his passives aren't the most interesting in the world. This one's kind of cool because when you're the only character left on your side, meaning when he's the only one left on the team, his skills will instead become 180% damage skill level. So it's 180% attack times whatever amount of stars the card has. So his 3-star would do like 400 or like 520% or something like that. Something crazy. So he can actually work as like a final member on the team if the enemy team were to focus on everyone but him, but that doesn't happen very often. Additionally, at the start of your turn, enhance attack rate stats for your characters by 4% if you haven't taken damage in the last turn. So if your characters do not get hit, they gain 4% extra attack, and this stacks up to 4 times, so Arima can get an extra 4 buffs off of that. Skill level up. Levels up a random skill of your team when the battle begins, which is personally what I'm trying to shoot for. This could make it so that inside raids, he by default starts with a 2-star version of his upgrade. And so this is like my main priority right now. This is like what I'm going for. Pretty much I need to get, so if it's 8 SSR coins per level, I need to get an extra like 16, and then it would go up by another 4, so I need like 32 right now to be able to get this for the SSR coins, which is a lot, but it is very worth it. And additionally, he gains a power burst, which increases a random skill level. So if he hits 3-star on his cards, he would automatically upgrade 1 character's stars. Not bad. Not as relevant because you don't often combine Uta cards into 3-star, but pretty good regardless. Oh, I can also upgrade his bond. Cool. So yeah, he doesn't have too bad bonds, honestly. I think Uta, he's like that secret hit of the game. Next up, pretty basic character right here. This is an AoE style unit. Akira, she basically gives bleed to the entire enemy team, which will do damage based on 20% of her max attack, which can be very good. It's just, you know. Oh wait, damage taken increases by 20% of blood pierces applied attack for 2 turns. Oh no, it doesn't bleed them. It instead increases the damage they take by 20%. By 20% of the applier's attack. I misunderstood this actually. That's better. It could work alongside the debuff team pretty well. But because she's AoE, I mostly just use her as like an AoE style breaker for most green quests. She also gains extra attack for every deployed STR character, so every red character. She has an instant retaliate if she gets hit by the enemies, and ooh, she also has like an extra little multiplier on people hit by a blood piercer as well. Cool. She has damage amplification, increases damage dealt when allied characters use a debuff skill. And it's effective in the backup state, so if she was in the back row of your team, she would also increase the 10%. And Power Burst reduces all enemies' defense by 10% for 1 turn. So what I'm seeing out of her is very much like in a strength style build that's made to break green quests very easily and increase the DPS of your characters so that they're able to thrive. It's not really that she'll specialize in anything more than she's just like a saboteur style unit that also works pretty well alongside like AoE breaking. So can be worth it. I'll probably use her quite a bit, but she's not the best in the world. Pretty cool though, definitely. So this Hinami is one that I pulled early on, and I didn't expect her to be as irrelevant as she's been so far. But because of how the game has been built so far, I'm not using this green Hinami very often, even though she's one of the only healers inside the game. You can see right here, restore HP equal to 30% of the damage to all your characters. So this is based on her DPS. She'll heal her team for that amount as well. And so you're kind of wanting to build her with like a really high attack stat, which I personally haven't done. And it kind of shows. Additionally, when you use your own skills, every one of your teammates will gain an extra 100% of attack HP at the end of the turn, and then also increase their max HP by 5%. So this is generic heal if you were to use any card on a turn. Gets rid of debuffs on your turn on your characters at the start of the turn. So this actually could cleanse weak off of you if you were lucky enough. So it would be like a 1 in 4 chance of cleansing the weak off of one of your characters if you were to be using it. Skill level up. When your battle begins, levels up your skills once your HP drops below 50% for 1 time. Not bad for her, but it's a really heavy investment to get that. And then Power Burst heals all odd characters for 5% of lost HP. Oh, the lost HP sounds kind of bad, actually. Because of lost HP, that implies that the 100% version of that is the amount that's missing. So if you're missing 70% of your HP, 5% of that would be more like, I don't know, like 4.3% of your actual max HP or something like that, even lower than that. Because of how it scales off of lost HP, I feel like this one will be more irrelevant in terms of limit breaks and trying to go for them. Even so, still a pretty strong character, honestly. And I feel like if she has a lot of dupes, she might actually be pretty worth it because of her attack stat. See, this is another weird one. This character is mostly made for like the mono Aogiri team, but Nico is very strange. So Nico will remove all debuffs from allies, reduce max HP by 10% by everyone, so every member of your team loses 10% HP, increases the damage they deal by 10% and the damage they take by 10% for 1 turn. This also applies to the higher upgrades of the cards, just with higher multipliers and longer amounts of turns. So it goes from 1 turn to 2 turns. So this means that this is one of the abilities that gives you 4 total buffs, technically, on a turn. This would increase amplification by a flat 60%. So I felt like this could be really relevant and could be really good, but I haven't found a lot of situations in which Nico is actually good inside most situations because the game is so DPS heavy so far. And so we'll see if like there's a mono Aogiri team that uses amplification that actually cares about Nico, but so far I haven't found a lot of uses for Nico so far either. Every 3 times you're attacked, all debuffs get removed. As your turn starts, basic allies of all allied Aogiri tree members above 80% are increased by 10% for 1 turn. So yeah, synergizes with other Aogiri members, and if they're topped off or super high HP, they'll gain extra 10% HP as well. Increase restoration rate by 7% for every 5% HP lost. Not bad. That kind of stacks up pretty well. Interesting. That one's not that bad. It sounds kind of weird, but based on the amount that you lose, you gain extra restoration, and it increases the buffs that you would get from it as well. So like the Hinami heal would go up by 7% for every 5% you lose. Not bad. Probably be able to keep him alive for pretty long. And then finally, gaining power burst heals you for 10% of lost HP. So that would also synergize with restoration. So they're kind of like a backup weird support. They're also a lady boy in love. Hell of a name. Oh man. But I feel like Nico, if we get like a really strong Yamori, if we get like a really strong Tatara, if we get a super powerful version of Eto, this guy could probably come back up inside pretty relevant ways, but just right now he hasn't been able to shine. So far we are 6 characters down, hell of a lot more to go. Let's do it. I'll try to speed up a little bit through these. So this Kaneki, he gives anti-heal to the enemy team, and he applies it for several turns actually, no matter what style of card he's using. So this lethal, I think, is one of the things that would hard counter the hell version of the blue Kaneki boss fight, for example, because this boss fight over here on Repel Ghouls, he will instantly top himself off when he dies for the first time, and he will have vampirism so that he will heal back the damage that he does to the enemies. So this lethal would hard counter that. So this Kaneki could be relevant for that. Additionally, he gains extra energy for attacking debuff targets, which is pretty strong actually. You could work with that pretty well. Using an energy card increases your max attack by 5%. Up to 3 uses, so he has an extra 15% attack buff for every energy card you've used. Boost active skill damage, doing 30% more damage, so just a flat DPS increase. And when you gain the 3-star power burst enhancement, you would gain 10% basic stats for the 1 turn. Very much like a one-trick pony, but a one-trick pony that may be pretty relevant. His star increases, because he's an SR as well, might be pretty relevant. So implying weak increases basic stats for 2 turns. And upgrades lethal effect to ultra lethal effect. Unable to trigger any healing effects and reduce target's max HP by 10%. So if you were able to get this Kaneki up to 6-star, he would also be able to get rid of target's max HP and apply the hyper lethal instead of just lethal. So if you do have extra SR coins for him, might be worth it just to save those and put them into him as well. I'll probably be working on him quite a bit myself, honestly. I did get a copy of this Yomo as well. I haven't actually read up on him, so let's find out. Amplification for a good amount. Reduces damage dealt, increases damage taken. Reduces crit resist by 20%. So he would apply himself with 3 buffs, meaning 45% extra amplification damage by default. And he also has amplification, so he's one of the only speed characters that has that as well. That's for every buff you have, deal 15% extra damage to enemies. Also effective in backup state, when using an energy card, increases all allied characters' attack rated stats by 6% for 1 turn. If he's in the back, he gives an attack buff to your entire team for every energy card. That might be relevant, actually. I might keep him in my back row just because Arima could actually use that pretty well. Also effective in backup state, all allied characters' attack-related stats are increased by 5%. That's crazy. Also effective in backup state, before an enemy casts a skill, reduce all stats by 3% for the remainder of the turn. Holy shit. So that would mean every turn they would lose a default. That'd be 12% total, because 3, 3, 3, 3. That's not bad. Because then, if all their stats are reduced by 12% before you attack them, they're probably going to get hit pretty fucking hard by your characters. And finally, Power Burst increases basic stats by 10%. So it seems like every one of the final limit upgrades are like the 3-star card upgrades. This Yomo is probably going to be one of the best characters to have inside the back row for right now, because he's offering so many buffs to your characters, and then also offering debuffs to the enemies based on how many cards they are using. Additionally, yeah, his 6 stars are just like ultra amplification, stuff like that. Interesting. Yomo might be one of the characters I have as in my back row for most fights inside this game if we don't find other passives that are kind of relevant. Interesting. Very strong character. God, Mougan. Sarudomo. Osaru-san, sorry. I said Sarudomo because I'm in a ghetto mood, I suppose. Mougan is straightforward. Mougan does one thing. Mougan doesn't buff himself like Yomo did. So he just has amplification, and so his passives must be the thing that carries him. At the end of your turn, grants a charged up state if you have used a skill stacking up to 3 times. Charged up increases basic stats by 5%. So if you were to use 3 skills on a turn, you would gain 15% extra basic stats, and that's permanent. There's no wearing off of that. So you would just need to use 3 of his cards to get him fully ramped up. The start of your turn, deal damage equal to the 20% of your attack to the lowest enemy HP if you have 3 or more charged ups. So if you get the 3 stacks, then he will shoot the enemies at the start of your turn for double damage, which is higher than his 1-star card, just by default to the lowest enemy. Interesting. Every charged up increases your pen rate. Is it? It stacks up to 3 times, so it doesn't actually go over. Then Power Burst grants him a charged up as well. Because charged up only goes up to 3 times, I feel like he does have a pretty big ceiling in terms of how far he can go. This seems like it's going to be really good for finishing off characters and trying to make sure you don't have to use skills on units that are super low, so you can focus on using your skills on ones that are actually relevant, while still having someone who will kill them. The mono red team will probably thrive using him. You would just need to pop like 3 of his skills immediately as you start the battle. But not bad. I feel like you would need him to definitely get the ultra amplification. I don't think he's going to be all that relevant. He probably is like a C tier at best. Unless like there's going to be something that increases the CCG synergies along the way as well. We'll see. Okay, so this is Nishiki. I read up about him when I first pulled him on the video the other day. He's a vampirism style unit that focuses on basically your HP, my HP. And so he'll decrease defense related stats to enemies at the start of your turn. The lowest HP enemy. 20% defense decrease is also pretty good. So he has that like automatic start of your turn follow-up that Mougan was like touting a second ago, but he doesn't need to have the charged ups to be able to use it. He just by default does the 20% defense debuff to somebody, which I feel like as like a default thing to have is much stronger than Mougan's. He has vampirism boost, which is increased damage to debuff targets, increases your vampirism by another 40%. Effective and also backup state, enhances HP related stats for your characters and by 10% in Crusade Battle. So he has the SR Gil Thunder passive, but for every single typing as the back row. That could be worth it. If you're using like a Yoshimura Owl build, for example, one that focuses on max HP quite a bit, this may be one you want to have inside your back row, just to have the extra DPS, but I don't think I'd use it all that often. And he also gains extra vampirism off of his power burst as well. And obviously star ups, he's gaining the extra vampirism when he gets to 6-star. I feel like he's gonna be a really good single target DPS unit. And if you could try and make it so the enemies hit him more often, then he'll be worth it. But because vampirism relies on him being the one to be hit, it's gonna be hard to guarantee that. It's a curious one. He might be good, might be bad. I would put him at like a B tier for right now. So this is SR Touka. This is like the most basic version, but she does have some pretty relevant things here. So her 2-star version, if the enemy has any kind of debuff, so this could apply to even the debuffs that Yomo was applying a second ago, where if they use a skill they will gain the 3% weaken. If they have that 3% weaken, she can stun them on that turn, and they won't be able to attack at all on that turn. Otherwise, the 3-star just does the stun without having to have them debuffed already. Her passives: when attacking debuffed enemies, deal 10% more damage. Attack-related stats gain 4% for every debuff the enemies have at the start of your turn, stacking up to 5 times. So the weaken would stack up to 3 times. That would automatically give her like a flat 12% attack buff, just automatically, if Yomo was your back row, for example. So not a bad pick. This one is PvP only. Increase the damage of all allies' single target attacks by 10%. PvP so far, I've run into a lot of just straight up AoE focused teams, and so hearing single target damage doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in me, honestly. Then her power burst is increased basic stats for a turn. Not bad. Her star up version increases her stun to ultra stun, which immobilizes the target and causes them to take increased damage by 10%. I'll probably try to get her up to 6-star as well. Mostly just like all SRs I'm probably just going to try and focus on regardless. But that sounds like it actually has a lot of grounds for extra potential inside boss fights, so I want to try it out. I don't think that this turning into ultra stun would change the debuff thing, so you definitely need to rely on having at least one debuffer on your team to use her effectively. Not bad. Not bad at all. This is Noro. Noro has no voice lines, by the way. He's the only character in the game that has no fucking voice lines, and I love it. He is a powerful revival, and he is absolutely lit. I say that, he's actually not like the Noro from Tokyo Ghoul Dark War. He's basically another version, like a speed version of the Akira we were talking about earlier. He has Blood Piercer, which increases the damage taken by all the enemies by 20% of the Blood Piercer applier's attack for 2 turns. So, based on 20% of his attack stat, enemies will take extra damage according to that percent. Additionally, when taking single-time damage that exceeds 40% of your HP, nullifies the excess part and deals Blood Piercer to the enemies. Not single target, single time. So if anyone reduces your HP by 40% or above, you'll take only 40% no matter what, and you'll attack them in retaliation as well. Not a bad pick. I think that kind of adds to his survivability as well, because he can't be killed in one hit, and that would apply twice, so not bad. Start of your turn increases your basic stats by 15% if your HP is lower than 30%. So if you apply his retaliation twice, he would get 15% extra HP, or extra basic stats, basically. Every 2 times you use a skill, gain 1 Bloodthirsty effect. Bloodthirsty increase attack rate stats by 3% for 2 turns, second up to 4 times. So because it's only 2 turns, I feel like this won't go off all that often. Because most of the time you're not using Bloodthirsty more than once in a turn. And because you have to use the skills 2 times to be able to get the Bloodthirsty effects, this probably won't stack up to the 4 times at any point in any battle ever. Like, ever. Because the Blood Piercer effect is not one you would apply more than once on a turn, and you wouldn't be trying to stack that. It's very curious. And because it applies to using a skill and not hitting the enemies, it wouldn't apply to the retaliate either. You have to use a skill to get it to proc. And then when he gains Power Burst, he gets the extra Bloodthirsty by default as well. It feels like he was made as like a main DPS AoE style character, but he has the same traits as Akira, a character I wouldn't use as a main DPS because she struggles with that single target damage. I don't know where you'll fit. I feel like you might just be like a Saboteur style unit for another Aogiri tree style team when more come out in the future. It doesn't seem all that great. compared to the Noro inside fucking Dark War, which was like the top of the line, best guy in the goddamn world. All right, interesting. Next up, Takizawa. The original version, of course. So, he has on his 2-star, applies Incapacitate if the enemy is debuffed over 1 turn, or implies Incapacitate just by default on the 3-star. Unable to take any actions, increase the damage taken by 100%, and any attack suffers cancel of this effect. So Incapacitate works the exact same way that Freeze does inside Seven Deadly Sins Grand Cross. Basically, if the enemy gets hit, they'll be taken out of it, but because of how powerful it is, it's worthwhile. You would be able to incapacitate the enemies. You would be able to nuke them for double damage of a Rize card, for example. So my Rize cards right now hit for 200k. It would change that to 400k instead. And then you would just need to try and make sure that you either have a 3-star incapacitate to use after, or apply weakness on them so they wouldn't be able to attack that turn anyway. Basically, it's a freeze. At the end of your turn, if you use it, they won't be able to attack. If you don't use it at the end of your turn, it's an attack buff to whoever's attacking next. Not bad, and kind of interesting in terms of building teams. He also has, each time a control effect of the enemy ends, all allies' characters restore 50% of their lost HP. Control effect, so that would be Provoke, Taunt, that would be Shield, that would be, like... Is there anything else that, like, applies to that? I think it's only those 3. Otherwise, they might also count the debuffs that are control effects, which includes Incapacitate and Stun, in which case this Takizawa might be able to be like a really weird pinch healer, where you use him alongside another stunner, and through stunning 2 people on the enemy team, you could heal 30% of your lost HP every single turn. Not a bad idea. All allies with lower rank CCG investigators take 30% reduced damage in Crusade battle. Oh, so he's made to synergize with low-ranking members of the CCG. So he'll work on the Juzo team. Interesting. All allies skill-related attacks. All green characters gain 8% attack as well. Doesn't say it works in the back row either, so it shouldn't apply if he's in the back row. He has to be on the field. And then he also increases basic stats. What is the star-up version of Incapacitate? Ultra Incapacitated. Increased damage taken by 100%, suffering 2 attacks cancels its effect. So it changes it into a freeze that has a block feature for 1 hit, but it also increases the damage. This Takizawa at 6-star might be one of the best characters in the game. He's like a sleeper hit, but when Juzo drops tomorrow, we'll see how relevant it turns out to be alongside like the Akira team, I imagine. Interesting. He seems rad. I definitely want to use him in the future. It's kind of low-key, but I feel like he's like a sub-healer. Alright. Howdy there. Shinohara Arata, I pulled you the other day and you seem like you're really, really powerful. He's also on the higher CCG, so he works alongside Arima and stuff like that. I wonder if he has any buffs for that, like, category. But what he does is he'll apply 15% damage debuff on the enemies. So I believe that Feeble is a debuff that would go on the enemy that you hit, and they would do 15% less damage to your entire team afterwards. And you can use that as like a synergy alongside the rest of your debuff team. Casting a skill for the first time causes all allied characters to increase their damage by 10% and take reduced damage by 10% for 1 turn. That's kind of a nice default thing, like a sub-tank type of thing. As the battle starts, grant all allies a shield worth 20% of max HP for 1 turn. For PvP, that sounds really relevant. For most situations, I feel like it might not be, because it only lasts for 1 turn. Interesting. Each time an allied character gains a buff from you, the target's basic stats are increased by 3% for 3 turns, stacking up to 3 times. So both of these passives will apply the basic stat buff. I think... See, because of how this is phrased, I don't know if this applies to itself. But if it were to apply to itself, then whenever you enter a battle, you would by default get all 3 stacks of this. But I don't think it applies to its own buff, and so you'd only get 2 stacks based on the attack and defense buff. And the shield. Wait, no, you would get all 3 stacks because it is these 2. Interesting. Then shield's whole team for a certain percent. Shinohara might be like a sleeper hit in terms of PvP teams, just because he's able to get rid of like the highest problem enemy on the enemy team with Feeble, and then otherwise he's just buffing every other character on your team and giving them shields that'll protect them. He might be a good counter to the AoE focused Toka Rabbit, Ayato, and Yoshimura Owl team that's currently running around a lot at the moment, so kind of cool. Oh man, I pulled a copy of Itori, and I haven't actually read up about her. She seems like, just by her card, she would not be that relevant, just because she is only a buffer. So increase basic stats of all allied characters, teammates included, by 13% for 3 turns, making them immune to all debuffs. So it seems like she's kind of an Arthur, if that makes sense. Like a red Arthur from Grand Cross. Every time a turn starts, taking no damage causes allied characters to deal 5% increased damage, stacking up to 3 times. This applies permanently, so this would apply up to 15% damage to your entire team, just if they don't get hit by the enemies anyway. Increase all allies strength related, all red characters basic stats by 10%, okay. Casting a skill makes all allied characters immune to weak for 1 turn. That's permanent, because you could just always pop a skill every turn to keep that up. Interesting. And reduce damage taken. So she's definitely a support. Anti-weak is pretty strong, and the extra 10% basic stats might be kind of nice on strength characters, but I don't know what sorts of teams would benefit most from this, aside from just like the Arima and Mougan amplification teams that are trying to prioritize high DPS and like strength, pretty much. STR. We'll see. I might work on her. We'll see. Taishi Fura, I wanted to use him quite a bit. He has the Red Gauther's anti-attack skill buff, or debuff, on the enemies. So he can make it so the enemy team can't use any attack skills for 1 turn, but it's AoE. And so any version of this where they can't cleanse debuffs, they're not going to be able to hit you whatsoever unless they're using skills that are also doing like incapacitate or doing stuff like this. It has to have a debuff property on it to be able to be used. Additionally, start of your turn, if undamaged since last turn, increase all allies' senior CCG investigator attack by 10%. So that works alongside Arima and Shinohara, I guess. Using an energy card grants additional 10% Warlust energy. Speed characters gain an extra 10% max HP. And Power Burst increases that. Just, yeah, okay. What is your upgrade? His upgrade at 6-star is his anti-attack abilities that are AoE also increases the damage dealt by 20% for each debuff the enemy has. That's pretty strong. That could be used for a lot of pretty strong things. The trouble is he synergizes with CCG seniors, but he has a speed/blue synergy for max HP. So I don't feel like he works alongside either Shinohara or Arima. There must be another like speed CCG member that needs max HP at some point. Interesting. He's a bond for Arima, so I'll probably end up upgrading him quite a bit anyway because I like him. But that's just, you know, I like Taishi. Taishi from Tokyo Ghoul Jack was rad. Amon, he does extra damage by 20% of your lost HP, so he can pretty much nuke if he is at low HP. I will star him up, actually. And let's read his abilities. He has the default Provoke, which is, at the start of the turn, draws all attacks to you. So that's just like a default thing, but unfortunately it is only for one turn. So other characters that have provoke on a card, for example, will be more relevant using that. Though it will make it so his amass does a lot of damage on the first turn. The start of your turn removes all your debuffs, so only his. The start of his turn, restore 20% of lost HP, and then increase basic stats. He is so straightforward. There's never been a more straight-laced man than Amon. And you know what? Cool. I don't know if he'll be relevant considering the sort of SSRs that are currently in the strength category. We'll see. Our boy. This is our hero. This right here is an R character that can be upgraded all the way both to SR, SSR, and now I gotta keep on going. But he's gonna get to UR. I'm gonna do a showcase of UR Banjou, don't you goddamn worry. But he is gonna be a character I'm excited to use in the future. Let's just read up about his skills and see what he's all about. So he has Provoke. So what we were talking about a second ago, where Amon isn't as good because his Provoke is on like a default, just first turn basis. Banjou has Provoke on a skill, so he'll gain the stance and actually draw attacks to him every single time you use the skill. Start of your turn enhances your attack by 10% over one turn if you're affected by any debuff. Increase pin rate if you have buffs, which would include Provoke. Allied characters are reduced by 15% if they're on the Aogiri tree team. And Power Burst. So he does have an Aogiri synergy. Not bad. That might be kind of nice with the 15% on some teams, because that would also apply to him no matter what, but it's just a matter of having other Aogiri members that can carry you while he takes all the damage. I want to use him. He'll be one of the champions later. Probably like a B tier. What does the upgraded Provoke actually do? Reducing damage taken by 15%. That's also pretty good. I want to use that. Okay. Extra 2 weak if enemy is debuffed, so he's another breaker like the blue Kaneki is. And when the battle begins, level up skills of the Bin brothers. If Elder Bin is in battle, you'll be synergize! Use an ultimate skill, increase 50% of max HP to all allied CCG officer members? What? You're an Aogiri member! Why are you buffing? So, are they expecting the team to be like CCG officers and the Bin brothers together? That's a really weird combo. Every skill used to decrease defense-related stats. Wait, every skill used decreases defense-related stats by 5% for all enemies for 2 turns. That has no limit either, so you could get up to like 8 debuffs on the enemies technically, if you were to really focus on it. Not bad. I will go ahead and take the extra star upgrade there. This is gonna be the... No, I want to see the other Bin brother first. I'm sorry, Applehead. So the other Bin brother has the same effect that the blue Touka did, where on his 2-star, if they're debuffed, he'll stun, or 3-star, it's a guaranteed stun. When the battle begins, enhances basic stats of the Bin brothers if the younger Bin is in battle. So yeah, they kind of synergize together. Using an ultimate skill of an allied CCG officer member, but increases the attack-related stats of all allied CCG members by 10% for 2 turns. Yeah, he's kind of trying to synergize with other CCG members. The fuck other officers are they trying to be run with? Like Arima? Every skill used enhances attack-related stats for your characters for 2 turns. Your characters means your entire team. That's strong. Then basic stats for 1 turn. Double Bin alongside like Shinohara Proto and Arima might actually be like a real ass team. I might try that. Okay, interesting. I feel like those two together actually might be like one of the more like niche SR teams that might be relevant. This Applehead is a pure DPS character with no extra traits on any of her abilities. The start of her first turn increases her vampirism by 50%, so that just Because it says at the start of your first turn, I don't think it wears off. Increase max HP by 10% for all non-organization members. So that would be like Itori, that would be Uta, that would be all like Gourmet, Noshiro, Corona. Okay. Increase damage to lower rank CCG investigators by 15%. There's not a lot in the meta right now, but she would be able to kill Takizawa pretty easily then. And then just, yeah, default stuff. Does her star up do anything to her? Upgrades the damage of active skills to be preemptive. Increases damage dealt by 4% for every 7% of enemies' remaining HP. One moment, I want to do a calculation. So, okay. Let's do... So if it's 4% for every 7%, we'll do 100 divided by 7. 14. 14 times 4. 56. She would get a 56% attack buff anytime she attacks someone with max HP. I feel like with a multiplier like this, you could actually make her a really good, like, raid nuker if you really, really tried. Use her alongside, like, Incapacitate, for example, so you would be synergizing all of that together. I could work with it. I fuck with it. Applehead, like, sleeper hit actually might be really good. Stun characters, he has a debuff thing. So he has the same properties as every other stunner we've seen so far. 2-star, it'll stun if they have a debuff. 3-star, it'll stun if they just exist. As assignment battle starts, if allied characters are CCG investigators, all ally skill level increases. So Marude has a passive that works the same as, I believe it was Thornir? No, there was some Grand Cross character that in Crusade, or like Demon, when they popped on the field, you would gain an extra skill buff by default. I don't remember who it was. There's a lot of seniors right now, so I feel like that could be kind of nice. It wouldn't apply to Uta, so it would require you to be using like a pure senior team. Also, assignment battle. What is assignment battle? Oh, assignment battle is only that one. So it only applies to the dispatch game mode. Marude is only relevant there. Interesting. Casting skill causes CCG senior members to increase their damage by 10% for one turn. As your turn starts, if all characters who cast skills during your turn are CCG investigators, your skill levels increase. So he would upgrade skills every single turn, no matter what, as long as you're running pure CCG investigators. Interesting. I can fuck with it. I think in that case, he's made to like make a very special like raid team where you're trying to kill like a very specific enemy with this team. He has stun as well, so I feel like he could work with like Incapacitate, stun, big damage. I want to test him out on one of the raids later on, so he'll be one of the ones I focus on later as well. Probably before Applehead, considering that he'll probably be relevant before then. This is Iwao / Kuriowa. He reduces skill levels on his 3-star, otherwise he does fucking nothing else. What's his star up increase? He gets underbelly, so he does extra damage based on debuffs. Damaging a boss character in PvE increases vampirism by 50%, so that's any bosses. Allied characters gain 10% attack-related stats by 10% in Crusade. Restoration rate by 15% until the end of your turn. At the end of your turn, so every single turn you'll gain the restoration rate, and it just stacks no matter what. It'll never stop stacking up to 5 as long as he's on there. And that's even on the back row. It says whole team. So the people coming in on the back row, like if you were to have Rize as your 5th character, she would come in and have even better vampirism because of that. And then basic stats. Interesting. I wonder if he'll be relevant. He doesn't seem all that great from what I'm seeing. but it's also because he's only single target. We'll see. Misato Gori is not a character I think about pretty much fucking at all. But what does she do? So she has an AoE, preventing them from using any debuff applying skills or control skills for 1 turn. And same thing. So she can cancel all stun, incapacitate, all versions of like additional damage, like underbelly, for example. Wait, no, underbelly wouldn't apply a debuff. It's all debuff skills. She's the opposite of Taishi, but could be just as relevant if you're fighting enemies that are giving themselves like, I don't know, if you're fighting someone who has like an Itori, for example, and they're just like cruising and buffing them every single goddamn turn. Her passives, PvP only increases pen rate of CCG lower members by 30%. Battle starts increases all enemies block chance reduced by 1% for each 1% of your pen rate. That also decreases that by 30% by default. Interesting. When HP drops below 50% for the first time, removes all debuffs, increases skill levels of only hers, I imagine. It doesn't say team, it just says her. What's it upgrade into? Underbelly. Okay, sure. She gets like extra debuff. That doesn't actually apply a debuff to them, so she could be relevant. She probably is going to be like a PvP niche team, where once block chance starts to become more relevant when we get characters like, I imagine like Coma, like the Devil Ape version of Coma is probably going to be the one that has like block chance synergy. So she'll probably be the one to counter out that when that becomes like a relevant thing in PvP. But right now, I don't see her having like a specific role, except for on like a Takizawa style team. We have Ayumu Hogi, which has the same properties as Iwao did, so only reducing skill levels. What are your passives? Basic stats of all CCG lower investigator and senior investigator are 10%, not bad. Each time an ally CCG lower rank member is down, all allies gain a shield of 20% max HP. Interesting. I feel like you don't want your characters to go down though. When using an energy card, reduces a debuff, and yeah. Then she gets underbelly. Honestly, you seem kind of trash. Unless you're trying to have it where there's like some sort of CCG member on your team that wants to die, you don't really want her to be on the field, because in most situations, she's not doing the most. Unless her attack is like really, really high. I don't see a use for her right now. That's like a D tier for me, but we'll see. We have Ito, which applies lethal. So he has the same properties as the green Kaneki SR version. So he can do the anti-heal on the enemy team, but he is a CCG lower rank, so it's a little bit better for that synergy. Energy gain from taking damage is doubled. All allies skill characters max HP by 10%. Restores 15% of max HP at the start of the turn if you have taken damage the last turn. Okay. Then basic stats. And then he gains ultra lethal, which is the same as the Kaneki gained. He has the same sort of relevance that Kaneki did. I do like the fact that he synergizes more with green, because you could make like a pretty nice green team instead of making it so you're prioritizing just the CCG lower members. Though it doesn't really seem like he's specializing in a lot. He's just kind of offering stuff to the rest of your team to make them survive for longer while he's applying lethal to the enemies. We'll see. I would say that's like a potential C, maybe B. I'm not quite sure. I think we're getting to the ones now. Yeah, we're about to get into the R's here in a second. I've been going for about an hour so far, so I actually might split this video in two, and we'll go through the rest of the characters, including the ones that I currently don't own, in tomorrow's video, so expect that at 5 p.m. EST tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching. We'll get through the rest of the characters after that, and discuss kind of team building and the sort of ways that you could build around them then. For now, which character that I've covered so far do you think is going to be one that's going to feature on your team the most? Personally, I think Arima is probably going to be a mainstay on my teams, but we will see as the game develops. Thanks for watching, take it easy. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the second part of every character in Tokyo Ghoul Break the Chains at the start. Bye bye!